who's a real journalist? So, Peter, who is a real journalist?
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting question because you used to be a real journalist if you were working for a newspaper or a radio station or a TV station. That was a pre-internet. It's sort of your employment defined itself. I mean, I started my newspaper career at a little weekly newspaper, but it was an established brand, and I had a business card which identified me as a journalist and that sort of stuff. And then the internet came along and basically became everybody who had a laptop could become a journalist, right? Because you no longer needed a press or a broadcasting license in order to be able to do it. I don't really have any great problem with that. I think it's very democratizing. I think it held a lot of media to account in ways they weren't used to and in ways they didn't like, and gave them direct contact with a lot of readers and viewers and listeners in ways they didn't before. But I think the real key here is sort of isn't what is a real journalist. It's kind of like what is real journalism. And I think we've sort of very broadly fallen into sort of two buckets. One is a bucket in which people work for whom journalism is not only the means but the end. To use Minister Freeland's phrase there, it's sort of to bear witness and hold power to account, if you want to use those terms. If your aim as a journalist is journalism only, right? I am going to go out there and I'm going to record the world as it happens. I'm going to watch it closely. I'm going to try to find out everything, the who, the what, the where, the why, and that sort of, and I will give that information to people and they will decide what to think of it, right? To me, that's journalism.
Right.
And that's a very traditional way of looking at it. There's what's occurred more and more, and this isn't new either because it has existed in the past. Jack Reed, the famous American journalist who covered the Russian Revolution, would fall into this category, are activist journalists, for whom journalism is not the ultimate purpose. Journalism is a means towards an end. So I would put, actually the two journalists who were arrested this week, both in that category, both from different areas, but they are using journalism to pursue a cause, a philosophical cause, an ideological cause, a corporate cause. I mean, there's all kinds of different ones. I don't think that should be illegal or anything, but I think people should really understand the difference, right? So that's a long-winded way of getting to your point, but in terms of licensing journalism, sort of in terms of that, first of all, is what is the problem you're trying to solve? And I don't really see one from a grand scheme of things. I can see as the government gets into permanently funding journalism, then it needs to start defining what an approved journalism organization is. The problem with that is that there are some organizations, Blacklock's, Western Standard, The Line, for instance, just off the top of my head, there's 3 who refuse to even apply for government funding or government because they value their independence. I mean, so you're getting into a point where the people who want to be truly independent don't get licensed as journalists, whereas the people who want to take the government's money do. So I actually hate the idea, but I actually think it's going to happen, because sometimes things I hate do happen.
Yes. So we are in, I guess, a time of, talking about things like accountability and then who decides. I mean, this is where it's going to probably get to be more difficult, is who decides what will be, what is a real journalist. And it may depend on, who's in power.
Well, right now, in terms of qualifying for the journalism labor tax credit, and inevitably probably for money that comes from Google, there's a panel of, I think it's 4 at the moment, but I think it was 5, but it might just be 4 people. There's a panel appointed by the government that makes the recommendations to Canada Revenue Agency in terms of the tax credit as to whether these people are committing journalism or not, right? And everybody says that's independent. But the fact of the matter is, this panel is appointed by the government. It reports annually to the Minister of Heritage, who reports daily to the Prime Minister's office, who is strictly under the instruction of the Prime Minister, right? Now, you might want to call that arm's length if you want, but the generation of journalists I come from call that terrifying, right? There is no way anybody would have gone for anything like that without evidence of a stricter firewall. And I say that with great respect to the people who were on that panel, right? But at the end of the day, they are deciding, and Rebel News did apply and was rejected, right?
Right.
Much to their, which helps them probably make more money than they ever could have got out of the journalism labor tax credit. But you know what I mean? That's what's happening. You've got government appointees deciding, and I don't think that helps anybody.
Well, one of the things that happens is that depending, right, who's in power. I mean, people may celebrate this now, but down the road under different political leadership, they may not like this. And, that's where that consistency comes in. I always said, like, if you're going to defend the right to free speech, you have to also defend the right for someone to say something that may not be nice, or they may not like, or you may disagree with. As long as it's not promoting hate. And we always have to say that, because people always bring that up, that it's like there are lines that get drawn, but I'm talking about generally people saying things that may just be disagreeable.
Yeah. I mean, people hear things that they hate, and they decide that must be hateful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really a lack of critical thinking in terms of that. I mean, sometimes, like I've said this before, I mean, I get up in the morning and I listen to CBC News at 6 a.m. or something like that. And before it's finished, I've been offended several times, right? Somebody has said something that has made me roll my eyes and mutter, right? But I summon the courage and fortitude to carry on through the day.